Hello and welcome to episode 1 of my reading diaries. I find I'm really forgetful, so if I've loved a book and it's like changed my life, I can't remember why, or I tell everyone about it, but then I kind of like need to reread it. So I really like the idea of recording what I'm learning or points that I really liked from the book. Like this book that I'm reading right now, The Power of Now, I just want to talk about it. I guess it's because it's like in line with where I am right now, but I tried to read this years ago when I was a teenager and I just couldn't get my head really into it. And now it's like, it's so where I need it in my life. It's like I'm reading my best friend. I'm like, yes, 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 like loving everything it's saying. I just want to talk about it. I was like, I just want a video so I can talk about this book while I'm reading it. And already I can't remember what I've read. So I kind of want to read together. I thought this could be good if someone wants like an idea of a book or like the key point of interest from someone's point of view without reading it as well, or to get a feel for whether they want to read it. So yeah, the book that I'm on at the moment is The Power of Now, A Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment by Eckhart Tolle. Chapter 1 is You Are Not Your Mind, and I love this. This is kind of the idea that you are not just your mind. Obviously we know, like they say, like even the gut is like a second brain. You know, there's a lot more going on, and this idea that you can take yourself out of your mind, you can be in charge of your mind. You are not your mind. Those who have not found their true wealth, which is the radiant joy of being and the deep, unshakable peace that comes with it, are beggars, even if they have great material wealth. They are looking outside for scraps of pleasure or fulfillment, for validation, security or love. Well, they have a treasure that within that not only includes all of these, but is infinitely greater than anything the world can offer. Not to be able to stop thinking is a dreadful affliction, but we don't realise this because almost everyone is suffering from it, so it is considered normal. So this idea that mental noise, like you can switch off and it's like a practice, and this is obviously meditation, you can get to a state of peace where you haven't been thinking, and I definitely get this. Like I'll do things, it's like that feeling when you're in the car and then you get somewhere and you don't even remember how you got there, and you're like, I can't remember what even happened. You kind of zone out. And I think that's like a real state of peace. So enlightenment is not only the end of suffering and of continuous conflict within and without, but also the end of dreadful enslavement to incessant thinking. What an incredible liberation this is. Thinking has become a disease. Disease happens when things get out of balance. You mean stop thinking altogether? No, I can't, except maybe for a moment or two. Then the mind is using you. You are unconsciously identified with it, so you don't even know that you are a slave to it. It's almost as if you were possessed without knowing it, and so you take the possessing entity to be yourself. This is what I think is really interesting, is this idea of like how people don't want to sit with themselves, like, you know, people that are nervous to be on their own, uncomfortable to have to stand in a queue or sit and wait for something with nothing. We're so full of distraction, aren't we? Like phones, other entertainment, that like it's like too uncomfortable to just sit with ourselves and be. And actually how content you are when you can and you enjoy just being and just sitting. I feel lucky that I've always kind of had that, not probably always, but learned it probably from boredom in childhood and things like that, but an enjoyment in the sitting alone and being, letting your mind wander and not finding it uncomfortable, because that's where your mind becomes creative as well. So you can sit and switch off, but equally if your mind does go on a journey, sometimes that's exciting too. And this is what I love the idea of, is this concept of the watcher who watches the thinker. So like you've got the thinker of like in you, and then you step out of that and you become the watcher and you watch the thoughts. And it's almost like, I always think of it like the parent and the child. It's kind of, it reminds me of the chimp paradox idea of like the computer and the chimp, and the idea that there's these different kind of parts of your brain or your mind. This idea that I like I was saying, I like to think of it as the parent and the child. Like the child is doing all this thinking and you can step away as the parent and go like, take control back again and go like, no, we're not thinking this way now, or whatever. So it says, the moment you start watching the thinker, a higher level of consciousness becomes activated. You then begin to realise that there is a vast realm of intelligence beyond thought, that thought is only a tiny aspect of that intelligence. You also realise that all the things that truly matter, beauty, love, creativity, joy, inner peace, arise from beyond the mind. You begin to awaken. And then the concept is about just beginning this simply by starting to pay attention to your thoughts. And like, it's that idea of like, where did that thought come from? Is that voice yours? Or was that, you know, something your parent used to say, or whatever else, like the things that we carry that aren't even ours. And yeah, just watching, just becoming into that state where you are the watcher of how your mind is thinking is the first step to detaching from certain things, realising patterns, all of those things that open more up. So when you listen to a thought, you are aware not only of the thought, but also of yourself as a witness of the thought. A new dimension of consciousness has come in. As you go more deeply into this realm of no mind, as it is sometimes called in the East, this is the idea of being fully present. You realise the state of pure consciousness. In that state, you feel your own presence with such intensity and such joy that all thinking, all emotions, your physical body, as well as the whole external world become relatively insignificant in comparison to it. And this is interesting. It says, instead of watching the thinker, you can also create a gap in the mind stream simply by directing the focus of your attention into the now. Just become intensely conscious of the present moment. This is deeply satisfying. This is a deeply satisfying thing to do. And this is something that I think is lovely about motherhood, because being around a young child does that, because there's no space for other thought. So you really bring yourself into what's going on in the situation right now. And it's like that thing, our suffering is usually only in the future or the past. So usually we're thinking about the future and worrying about something. We have fear of the future, or we're sad about the past, or we're missing the past. It's often there's not much suffering unless something is happening to you right in this moment. Most suffering is not in the present moment, depending on your life obviously and what you're going through, but it is worry for the future or sadness for the past. I feel like artists do this, and I feel like I was kind of taught to do this through doing art and then doing art at college and everything, because you are looking for those things, you're noticing, you know, whatever you're kind of doing art about, like when we had a flower or something, you're looking for everything, you're noticing. When we did life drawing and we do different activities like drawing only the white space around, or when you're looking at shadows or whatever it is, you're like focused on different, noticing things that you wouldn't normally notice. Oh, I've actually circled this bit. Thinking is only a small aspect of consciousness. Thought cannot exist without consciousness, but consciousness does not need thought. Thinking is only a small aspect of consciousness. Thought cannot exist without consciousness, but consciousness does not need thought. Why should we be addicted to thinking? Because you are identified with it, which means that you derive your sense of self from the content and activity of your mind. I liked this as well. This is the idea that we grew up and formed a mental image of who we are, and then what people do is they cling to that. The term ego means different things to different people, but it's the false self created by unconscious identification with the mind. So it's really important to the ego to kind of hold on to this is who I am thing, and like the beginning of breaking that away can be scary, but it's also really exciting. How can a single human cell measuring 1 in 1,000 of an inch in diameter contain instructions within its DNA that would fill 1,000 books of 600 pages each? The more we learn about the workings of the body, the more we realise just how vast is the intelligence at work within it, and how little we know. When the mind reconnects with that, it becomes a most wonderful tool. It then serves something greater than itself. Then it goes on about emotion, the body's reactions. I love this. This is obviously all the links between how our mind affects our body and our body affects our mind. And I really like the setup of the book. So it's got like a question and then the answer. So like, what about emotions? I get caught up in my emotions more than I do in my mind. And then goes on with an answer. The more you are identified with your thinking, your likes and dislikes, judgments and interpretations, which is to say the less present you are as the watching consciousness, the stronger the emotional charge, energy charge will be, whether you are aware of it or not. If you cannot feel your emotions, if you cut off from them, you will eventually experience them on a purely physical level, as a physical problem or symptom. We know that with obviously the build-up of people either getting discomforts in their body or illnesses. If you have difficulty feeling your emotions, start by focusing attention on the inner energy field of your body. Feel the body from within. This will also put you in touch with your emotions. We will explore this in detail later. And then it talks about how observing emotions is just as important as observing your thoughts, and you should make that a habit as well. And then you start to notice, it's like noticing triggers, like what affects you and what doesn't, and where you feel it in your body. I just find all this stuff fascinating. I love this. So it says, you say that an emotion is the mind's reflection in the body, but sometimes there is a conflict between the two. The mind says no while the body says yes, or the other way around. And this is so cool. It says, if you really want to know your mind, the body will always give you a truthful reflection. So look at the emotion, or rather feel it in your body. If there is an apparent conflict between them, the thought will be the lie, the emotion will be the truth. Not the ultimate truth of who you are, but the relative truth of your state of mind at this time. Conflict between surface thoughts and conscious mental processes is certainly common. I just think that's really interesting. Honestly, I talk about like favourite bits, but I just feel like I end up reading the whole book. An emotion usually represents an amplified and energised thought pattern, and because of its often overpowering energetic charge, it is not easy initially to stay present enough to be able to watch it. It wants to take you over, and it usually succeeds, unless there is enough presence in you. If you are pulled into unconscious identification with the emotion through lack of presence, which is normal, the emotion temporarily becomes you. Often a vicious circle builds up between your thinking and the emotion, and they feed off each other. So you can imagine this when someone does something and you get really frustrated, and then you go round in a cycle of like, oh, and they said this, and you get like this, it builds up, and you kind of go over and over it. The thought pattern creates a magnified reflection of itself in the form of an emotion, and the vibrational frequency of the emotion keeps feeding the original thought pattern. By dwelling mentally on the situation, event, or person that is the perceived cause of the emotion, the thought feeds energy to the emotion, which in turn energizes the thought pattern, and so on. And we've all been there, you get kind of more and more wound up. I mean, where does wound up come from? Like this idea of going round and round this cycle. It makes such sense. Basically, all emotions are modifications of our primordial, undifferentiated emotion that has its origin in the loss of awareness of who you are beyond name and form. Because of its undifferentiated nature, it is hard to find a name that precisely describes the emotion. Fear comes close, but apart from this a conscious sense of threat, it also includes a deep sense of abandonment and incompleteness. The mind can never find the solution, nor can it afford to allow you to find the solution, because it is itself an intrinsic part of the problem. Imagine a chief of police trying to find an arsonist when the arsonist is the chief of police. You will not be free of that pain until you cease to derive your sense of self from identification with the mind, which is to say from ego. The mind is then toppled from its place of power, and being reveals itself as your true nature. Glimpses of love or joy or brief moments of deep peace are possible whenever a gap occurs in a stream of thought. For most people, such gaps happen rarely and only accidentally, in moments when the mind is rendered speechless, sometimes triggered by great beauty, extreme physical exertion, or even great danger. Suddenly there is inner stillness. And within that stillness there is a subtle but intense joy, there is love, there is peace. Usually such moments are short-lived, as the mind quickly resumes to noise-making activity that we call thinking. Love, joy and peace cannot flourish until you have freed yourself from the dominance of the mind. But they are not what I call emotions. They lie beyond emotions on a much deeper level. So you need to become fully conscious of your emotions to be able to feel them before you can feel which lies beyond them. That which emotion literally means disturbance. The word comes from the Latin emover, which meaning to disturb. Love, joy and peace are deep states of being, or rather 3 aspects of the state of inner connectedness with being. As such, they have no opposite. Emotions, on the other hand, being part of a dualistic mind, are subject to the law of opposites. This simply means that you cannot have good without bad. So in the unenlightened, mind-identified condition, what is sometimes wrongly called joy is usually short-lived pleasure side of the continuously alternating pain-pleasure cycle. Pleasure is always derived from something outside of you, whereas joy arises from within. The very thing that gives you pleasure today will give you pain tomorrow, or it will leave you, so in its absence will give you pain. Even before you are enlightened, before you have freed yourself from mind, you may get glimpses of true joy, true love, or of a deep inner peace, still but vibrantly alive. These are aspects of your true nature, which is usually obscured by the mind. They will only be glimpses, soon to be covered up again by mind interference. It may then seem that you had something very precious and lost it, or your mind may convince you that it was an illusion. The truth is that it wasn't an illusion and you cannot lose it. It's part of your natural state, which can be obscured but can never be destroyed by the mind. Even when the sky is heavily overcast, the sun hasn't disappeared. It's still there on the other side of the clouds. The Buddha says that pain or suffering arises through desire or craving, and that to be free of pain we need to cut the bonds of desire. Pain is inevitable as long as you are identified with your mind, which is to say as long as you are unconscious, spiritually speaking. I'm talking here primarily of emotional pain, which is also the main cause of physical pain and physical disease. Resentment, hatred, self-pity, guilt, anger, depression, jealousy, and so on. Even the slightest irritation are all forms of pain, and every pleasure or emotional high contains within itself the seed of pain, its inseparable opposite, which will manifest in time. Seen from a higher perspective, both the negative and the positive polarities are faces of the same coin, are both part of the underlying pain that is inseparable from the mind-identified egoic state of consciousness. There are 2 levels to your pain, the pain that you create now and the pain from the past that still lives in your mind and body. Ceasing to create pain in the present and dissolving past pain, this is what I want to talk to you about now. So that is all of chapter 1, and I've just obviously talked about some of the bits that I find the most interesting and read out some of the bits that I enjoy the most. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will do another video on chapter 2 soon. Highly recommend. I'm just thoroughly enjoying this book and I'm not even that far through it. I really enjoyed that, so I hope you did too. Please comment if you've read it, any of your thoughts. I'd love to hear, and really excited to read more with you. Bye!